They can check more than one.
Okay, so seeking and hold.
All right, board, here we are.
Second.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 16th board meeting of the Conestoga Valley School Board. Welcome, everyone. Would you could all please join me with the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, again, welcome everyone. I'd like to make note that everyone is in attendance with the exception of Mr. Talley, and I believe he is on his way here. Board, I need a motion to approve our agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Okay. Board accommodations for the month of February. Congratulations to CV High School boys tennis coach Dale Gregg as he was named the 2019-20 Mid-East Section Boys Tennis Coach of the Year on behalf of the National Federation of State High School Association Coaches Association. It's a lot of words. The Middle East section includes Delaware, District of Columbia, Kentucky, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. Congratulations to the following middle school students, January students of the month for January. Connor Lewis, Safara Alzia, Arian Shah were the 7th grade students this month, while Cullen Bossart, Tommy Livingston, and Ansley Helsel were the 8th grade students of the month. I apologize to each one of those students if I got it wrong. Congratulations to the following high school student athletes who have committed to playing their respective sports after graduation from high school. They were recognized at the National Signing Day ceremony at the high school on February 3rd. Shaylee Daniels, Conrad Dillman, Brooke Everly, Ellie Livingston, Abigail Morley, Bella Saviglio, and Richard Valverde Gomez all have committed to play elsewhere to further their career there. Congratulations to CV High School junior Lexi Kaufman for being named Paradise Rotary Club Student of the Month for the month of February. Emily is a National Honor Society student. Okay. Oh, Lexi.
Yep.
Got it. Lexi is a National Honor Society student, president of the Valley Voice, which is CV's newspaper, and the treasurer of the Focus Club at the high school. Thank you for CV High School students from Tony Thomas's and Nick Howard's classes for their assistance with the Biggest Loser fundraising event being held from February 1st to April 30th. Senior Caleb Mamre from Mr. Thomas's class filmed and edited a promotional video, and fellow senior Devin Andruski from Mr. Howard's class designed both a logo for the fundraiser and the tracking graphic to mark the progress of each superintendent's weight loss. Congratulations to CV's esteemed writers as the following journalism students were being chosen to represent the high school in Sunday's edition of LMP's Gen Z page. Keep Baseball America's National Pastime by Jason Schleiermilch. He's a junior. Standardized test scores should no longer be required for college admission by Olivia Mellinger. She's a senior. And Setting the Future of Safety in the Police Force by Booper Johnson. He's a senior as well. And also congratulations to CV's esports team as they competed in the North America Scholastic Esports Federation Tournament. The team earned 3rd place in the National Rocket League Finals this past weekend. Those are the accommodations for February. Any superintendent comments? Dr. Steve?
Yes, Mr. President. I, along with my good friend and colleague, Petway Valley Superintendent Dr. Aaron Orndorff, embarked on a Biggest Loser competition beginning February 1st. As the president and president-elect of the Paradise Rotary Club, in order to come up with a fundraiser to help the local community, we decided to put ourselves out there to lose weight for our purpose. Members of each district are asked to donate toward each superintendent's chosen charity, CVCCS for me and the Factory Ministries Food Pantry for Dr. Orndorff, with either a food or monetary pledge based on either the number of pounds lost or a one-time donation. The link to make a donation is found on each district's website. As a side note, after the first weigh-in, I've lost 8 pounds, the doctor owes 6.2, so I'm crushing him right now. He blames it on the Super Bowl and lack of
I guess if,
self-control.
I guess if you call 2 pounds crushing it.
Crushing it. Lots of
Take it
snacks
where
when
you can get it.
That's right. Next week may be a different story. Now for the agenda updates, you'll see one clarifying change in the superintendent's report. Lindsay Chillot is a part-time ESL teacher who will be picking up more hours to her schedule to be paid with Title III funds. She was initially listed just as a ESL teacher, and it just didn't make sense if we're adding hours to a full-time teacher. The recent addition of people age 65 and over and those 18 to 64 with certain medical conditions to Group 1A has delayed the rollout to our faculty and staff who are Group 1B. Unfortunately, to assist the CV staff and support staff who fall into the 1A category, IU13 has teamed up with Sloan's Pharmacy to set up a mass vaccination opportunities for our qualified employees. We recently sent out a heads-up email to faculty and staff, as well as our SOSL and Breakville contracted employees, to make them aware of the upcoming opportunity for those in Group 1A to get vaccinated. More information as we did it will be sent out to the affected people. Turning our attention now to the updated COVID dashboard on our site, and I have that on the board. I also gave you a handout to take a look at. You'll notice the addition of a new column that highlights the number of cases that are being considered when deciding whether or not to temporarily shift to a virtual instructional model. As a reminder, when we have a long weekend of 3 days or more, we're able to conduct a hard reset as approved by the Department of Health and in compliance with our attestation document. Let me give you an example of as we compare last Thursday's data with today's updated data. So if you look at last Thursday's, you look at Brownstown and it says, oh boy, they have 7 cases in the last 14 days. That's not good. But then when you slide over, it's actually only 2 of those 7 are considered because 5 of them occurred prior to the last reset. So that means that the kids were not in session after the reset. So the column you really want to take a look at is that last column. When you bounce down to today's data.
That's you.
Wow, it's my phone talking to me. Thank you, sir.
You said call Brad, so great.
No one's at Brownstown yet.
That is so good.
Wow. Okay, and then you look at tonight's data. High school had quite a few cases last week prior to the 4-day weekend. So, but they have 0 when you look at the active cases on the far right. So far we have had no cases of students who have been in school, or any cases, students, teachers, support staff, since the break. Finally, based upon the forecast for this week, and goodness knows I love the forecasters. If we have,
Are you telling us now we have a?
if we have a snow day on Thursday, not a 2-hour delay or an early dismissal day, we are going to try a virtual instruction day. I'll be sending information out to the faculty, staff, and families. Definitely the faculty and staff tonight, families depending on when we get out, either tonight or tomorrow morning, informing them of the potential for a virtual instruction day on Thursday. Just like a snow day, except virtual teaching and learning will occur that day, so that the students will need to be ready to go to school on Thursday virtually through their computers or iPads. This way we won't have to go further into the full week of June and may be able to have an Act 80 day, which is teachers only on June 7th. But again, we'll see how it plays out after Thursday. And if the weather, as you said, Mother Nature, don't fool Mother Nature. That's it for tonight, Mr. President.
All right. Any correspondence from the secretary tonight?
Not this evening.
All right. Any board comments tonight? All right.
Jenna is here.
Jenna is here?
Yep.
All right, Jenna. You can come to the mic.
Getting your PowerPoint up now, Jenna, so just tell me when to click when, as soon as I get it open.
You're good whenever.
you are all set.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Jenna Ocean, I'm a senior at the high school. And I'm just here to update about what's going on at the high school, so,
Can you talk into the mic, Jenna?
oh, yeah. Is it okay if I pick it up? Cool.
Absolutely.
That way I don't have to stand in one spot and I can see everyone. Okay, so our clubs have been active as much as they can due to the COVID protocol, either meeting virtually or doing meetings in session and trying to do some type of event. So the National Honor Society over in December did Shop with a Buckskin still, and the students went shopping and brought the gifts, wrapped them, and gave them to the elementary schoolers. Student Council is currently working on the talent show and doing a virtual talent show so that students can still be involved and show what they're doing outside of school, but that way do it safely that no one gets sick. Focus has been doing a lot of virtual events over the past few months, meeting virtually and just trying to encourage students during a time that we're not really certain of. And SAD has been planning events. In the fall, they got canceled, but we are currently working on videos to give out to elementary schoolers, similar to DARE that used to go on, and working on some type of outdoor day in the spring. Other clubs are still really active and trying to do as much as they can, but there's a lot going on and it's really hard to keep track of it all. So they're just trying to make a really big positive impact in the school. One of the newer clubs in the school is Power. And Power has been working really hard to get spirit throughout the school, as well as promoting positivity and diversity within the school, accepting all different types of students between race, ethnicity, anything like that. And they have recently started a Spirit Week that'll take place next week. They created sweatshirts donated by the Atala program, and all of the students who purchased them will be wearing them next Friday in honor of Trayvon Martin's death. That will be a year from next Friday. So a lot of students participated, faculty participated, and they got a lot of involvement from outside of the school, which is really awesome to see. So it's not just our students participating, it's people in the community who are also participating. Our fall play got postponed due to the shutdown in November at the high school, but we will be having an on-demand showing this weekend, and people can pay by donation. There's no cost for it, but we just want to get out and show the students' hard work who participated in it. And then we will also be doing our spring musical, Grease, and they are in rehearsal right now working on it, working with singers' masks and different stuff like that. So still trying to promote the arts during this tough time and get people's involvement and positivity throughout the year. As Mr. Schertzer mentioned earlier, a lot of sports stuff has been going on. We had students commit to colleges, and they have done really awesome, and more students are committing as time goes on, and they will be signing later in the spring. The boys wrestling and boys basketball had a senior night earlier. The girls basketball team lost some of their season due to an exposure at another school, but they're still practicing and playing games again, so they're still trying to go out and have a season the best that they can. And there's just a lot of positivity and a lot going on at the high school, and just trying to stay safe as much as we can. And during the shutdown, a lot of students get to do stuff virtually just to promote positivity throughout the high school. And that's everything I have.
That's awesome. Any questions for Jenna?
I would like to add, between what we had last week and this, I am so impressed with how our students have put out the effort to continue to participate in not just athletic, but the arts and other specialties. I think they showed great versatility that will go far for them.
Absolutely. Good job, Jenna.
Thank you.
Great job, thank you.
you.
All right, moving on in our agenda here. Tonight we have two special things that I want to mention. As a board, I'm going to start with an award of excellence just for two awards of excellence that the board's going to give out tonight. One to Dr. Cartwright. Unfortunately, she is not here with us tonight, but I'm going to mention it rather than read this whole thing. She will get her award. But we just want to congratulate Kelly publicly. We want to say thank you to her for all her service to CV. She's been here for 20 years. She was a principal, then in her current role. And we're excited for her and her future as she goes on to be the superintendent at Dover. So she will be getting her award, but I just wanted to make mention of that here in public. And then I'm going to read this one here. In November 2003, John Smucker became a school board director for Conestoga Valley School District. For 18 years, he has provided leadership with a passion for doing what is right for our children. It has always been and continues to be personal for John. He has had all 4 of his children pass through the hallways of our various buildings here at CV and has mentored many more through his work at the Worship Center. His pride in the district is matched only by his commitment to faith, family, and community. We have been very fortunate to be a part of that community as John has helped navigate the district through all types of trials and celebrations. From building and stadium projects to mold in buildings, from major construction projects to contract negotiations, from hiring a new superintendent to supporting instruction during a pandemic, from making hard decisions, ones that he wouldn't say were hard, but were always focused on what was best for the kids, to celebrating the district's many successes. John Smucker has truly left a mark on Conestoga Valley. John has been a mentor to many school directors over the years, myself included, and his influence has been felt at the Lancaster County CTC as a long-standing board member for that worthwhile educational partner. Known for a tough guy exterior and someone who does not suffer fools, John's heart is bigger than most. He truly cares about every student that enters the district, and for the past 18 years has made sure that every one of them has had opportunities to be successful. The Board of Directors of Conestoga Valley School District would like to add their gratitude to that of Dr. Zukowski. We recognize the enormous impact John has had on people's lives, both inside and outside the school buildings. It is people like John, people who are selfless in their commitment to others, focused on the task at hand, who lead by example, and who make a positive difference in the lives of students and adults alike, that there are reasons for this award of excellence. John's commitment to the Conestoga Valley School District epitomizes the tenets of character, commitment, and community. Thank you, John, for making a positive difference.
Welcome. Those are some nice words. I don't think I've lived up to all of them, that's for sure. But it has been a pleasure to serve on the board. My kids asked me tonight, and I said,
John and I are like that way. We get emotional.
they said, what were your favorite memories? And I think one of them was when we surprised Dr. Huskin in naming the middle school after him. That was pretty cool. I think, handing your kids their diploma is a great thing. But I do think we have the best district around. And thanks to the people around this table and all of those that have been before us, we have a very strong district. And I'm looking forward to what you guys do in the future. Seasons come to an end, and my season as a board member, it was time to be done. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed working with many board members. I was thinking the other day, I wonder how many board members I've worked with in the past 18 years. We've been on this board you've been on for 20, I think. And so we've seen lots of stuff, but truly an honor to serve.
I will add to that, as probably the only one that's been here the whole time it's been, and what you read is right. He leaves a big hole for us to fill, a lot of responsibilities that he was unique in, and I, for one, definitely admire that.
Thanks, Odette.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, John. Okay. Andy, I don't know if you're gonna bring the same kind of emotion, but.
Yeah, that's a hard act to follow there. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to highlight Brownstown this month, and And that's sort of in the same line of an uplifting kind of feel-good thing. I overheard Mrs. Dupuy, third grade teacher in the faculty room, talking about a project she was doing with her students. It was about one word, and for some of you who might be familiar with this, I don't know how long it's been around, but instead of coming up with a New Year's resolution, you come up with a word, like a theme word for the year. And it was just great to listen to the kids come up with these words. It could have been trust or patience or listen, confidence, hope, joy, love. And so she did some activities. Mrs. Dupuy did this with her third grade students, and then Mrs. Ripley, I found out, with her fifth grade students, and then our art teacher, Mrs. Brown, got on board with that as well. So we just want to highlight that. We have a 10-minute video. Appreciate the teachers and the students putting this together. In our age of mass, hopefully the audio will pick up and you can hear what they say, but again, thanks for the opportunity to highlight Brownstown. Appreciate all you do as board members.
This is Noah Fosnot,
And I'm on.
reporting from Brownstown Elementary for C21. We all went through some tough times in 2020, but some of the teachers here at Brownstown are encouraging their students to stay focused on the new year and good times ahead.
In fact, let's go to one of those teachers now.
I know that you were doing a read aloud project with. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes, we were talking quite a bit this year, as we all have been, about it being a difficult year for us and having to make some compromises and do some things differently this year. And I know it's a little scary at times and also uncertain. So we decided to be a little proactive for the upcoming year. And at the end of December, with the new year coming, we decided to do a one-word project where the kids were asked to choose one word that either inspired them, made them happy, brought them joy, or reminded them of something that made them happy. And that was the one word that they were going to use going into the year to focus and concentrate on. So to start that, I read 2 books to them. The first one was called The Word Collector by Peter Reynolds, and it's about a little boy who loves to collect words. And as we read through the book and learned some of the words that he had written and saved down, in his journal, that we realized the power of what our words have. And as we got to the end of the book, he's explaining to the kids that even the simplest of words have a lot of power, like saying thank you, or you matter, or I'm sorry. So we knew that whatever word they picked needed to be one that meant a lot to them. We also read the book called Martin's Big Words, and we were talking about Martin Luther King in January, which went along with our one word project, and he talks quite a bit as well about the power of our words, how he often said that we needed to face things with love and not with violence, and the importance of caring about one another and feeling that we each are equal. That was a good start. Then the kids were able to pick a word from just a generated list that we talked about, which helped them a little bit. But they came up with some great words.
So I also heard that you were using technology to create posters. So what was the technology that was involved?
Yes. Actually, the boys and girls did not know that they have a CD email. So that was kind of fun for email. So we used the email to create a Google Doc, which was the first time we've done that. And in their Google Doc, they were then searching for pictures, images that go along with their word. And they needed to be images that helped to show reflection of the word or show something that kind of explains their word and what they would be doing during the year. So then after they found the words, they would have to cut and paste them and to print them. And then they made their poster.
So can I see one of the students' projects?
Yes. Okay, so here's one. Little boy did on organizing. He said his word, the year was organized. So he talked about why he chose that word and talked a little bit about some of the pictures they did at school, other pictures they brought from home. And this little girl picked the word smile, was her word. And she has pictures of things and things that she wants to think of during the year when she might feel down or feel a little disappointed or upset about things that are happening. So she explained why and some of her pictures. And then one of the little boy did on his word was thankful. So he talked about all the things that he's thankful for, including his family, being able to play sports, being able to watch sports, be with his friends.
So I heard that you did word. Can you tell me what your word was?
Word was curious, and I picked my word because I'm curious about my grandpa in Japan, and I'm curious about how he's doing.
Well, that's really neat. So Mrs. Dupuy said that you did a project on iPad, Google Doc. Can you explain more about that to me?
Yeah, so first I went on Google to get my pictures about what I'm curious about, and then I put them on my Google, I copied them and put them on my Google Doc. Then I missed the pictures and I cut them out with them on my poster.
Well, that's really neat. Thank you for letting me interview you, Cass.
I'm right. So you wrote a word prefix for your class. What was your word?
My word was smile because smiling makes a lot more people
Hey,
happy.
Titus, I'm Noah. And I wanted to ask you, what word did you choose?
I was thankful, and because even though I can't do a lot of things right now, I'm still with my family and I still see friends.
Well, that's really good. I'm glad you're getting to get together with them. So, what was your favorite part of this project? What did you like?
I liked printing them out and choosing the pictures
Why was that your favorite?
because I like to do electronic stuff, and so I I had to do stuff with the computer with my dad, and yeah.
Well, that's really neat. I like that too. Thanks for letting me interview you. All right. Hi, Mrs. Ripley.
Hi Noah, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm great.
All right. So I heard a rumor that you did a special project with the kids in your class. Care to share?
Absolutely. You know how 2020 was kind of a crazy year?
Oh yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, insane for some people. So I thought coming into this new year, we needed to focus on the positive. So instead of just doing your typical goal, I thought maybe let's change it up a bit. So I was looking online, trying to find some things, and I saw a whole bunch of ideas, but decided to focus on just putting some together and creating one idea. So my kids brainstormed a bunch of words that were important to them, and then they decided on one single word to focus on for the new year. They explained why they chose that word and created steps to help them focus on that word. And then they kind of decorated their picture and decorated a mask because masks are kind of our reality right now.
Yeah.
But the kids working towards it and they were excited about it and they've really tried to focus on that word so far this year.
Well, that sounds really amazing and cool.
Yeah, you should talk to some of the kids and see exactly why they chose some of their words.
All right. Well, let's do that next. Hey, Camilla.
Hey there, Noah.
I got a question for you. So I heard that you chose the word focus for it. We're doing. Now, why is that important to you?
Focus is important to me because, well, I want to do better on my test and focus more on when the teacher's talking and do better on my work.
That's really interesting. Why did you choose to display the words the way you did?
I displayed it like this so it kind of catches your eye because, the S is bigger. Focus.
It does kind of catch my eye. That's really interesting, Noah. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for letting me interview you.
Hi, Moana. Hello, Anya. I heard you're doing a special word project for school. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes, I'm doing it with healthy.
So why did you choose this word?
I chose this word because I think it's very important to be healthy.
I also heard you doing some action steps for this word. What's one of those action steps?
One of my action steps are to eat healthier foods
fruits and vegetables.
Why did you choose to display the word the way you did?
I thought it was a very fun and creative idea, and as you can see, I made the letters out of berry branches and people exercising underneath.
It's really cool. Thanks for letting me interview you, Mom.
You're welcome, Anya.
Mrs. Brown, I heard you were doing a word project like the 5th graders in Miss Ripley's class. Can you tell me more?
Yes, well, I was walking down the hallway and I stopped by Mrs. Ripley's class and I saw those goal word projects displayed and I was really curious about them, and so I asked about what was going on with that project, and I thought it was so neat that 5th graders were choosing one word to really inspire for the year and to really focus on. And so I thought, ooh, I think we could kind of expand on that in art class. So I thought about some ways that students could create artworks inspired by important words. And I was even thinking about some other famous artists who have done this. And so in art class, we looked at some other famous artists who create artwork based on words, and that helped inspire us.
Were the students allowed to do whatever they wanted, or was it more strict?
Well, I really think that the most important thing in art class is for students to have lots of choice in what they create. So we brainstormed together, we thought about our words, and we thought about what those words really meant and how we could communicate that idea in a visual way. And then students were allowed to choose their materials, and they could really present their artwork in a way that meant something to them. So they could create a sculpture, they could create a collage, whatever really worked for the word that they chose. Thanks, Anya.
Hey, Desiree. So I saw you did this project for this word project, and I saw your word was focus. Now, why did you choose that word?
I like that word because it reminds me of, like, I usually get to unfocused, that I can't stay still, and I like to close my eyes and picture, like, mountains, and then I like to picture the moon that's, like, focused on shining on the mountains.
Does that help you get focused? Like picturing
Yeah,
that?
it helps me get refocused.
Very cool. Where did you draw this?
In art class.
Very neat. I like how all the colors blend together and it does look like the moon's focusing. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Wow, those word projects we saw from 3rd and 5th grade were amazing. So, me and Noah decided to do our own. Mine says outside,
And mine says help, just like Milana's did.
so we challenge you to think positive and pick a word for 2021. Once again, I'm Anya Miller.
And I'm Noah Fosnut.
Have a good night, TV.
Bye.
Yeah, that was great. Any questions for Andy? Andy, anything you want to add?
No, sorry, it was difficult to hear at times, but for me, it was just such an encouragement to see the words these kids are coming up with, and just seeing how they're positive. I mean, it's amazing. I've just recently, in the news, you hear about all these schools trying to decide about opening up, and it's like, wow, I'm hearing things that we struggle with as a district in August, and I'm just so thankful that we've been able to do what we're doing here at CV. Every day to see these kids, and it's not always easy. There's a lot of flexibility that's required to make it happen, and I know difficult decisions for this board, and I just appreciate your leadership, so thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right. Mr. Sproul.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I see a lot of new faces here as board members. It's been a while since I've presented. I was scheduled for March of last year, and I think that was one of the first cancellations we did. So I'll take a minute to introduce myself for the new members here. As you know, my name is Dwight Sproul, and I'm supervisor of social studies and business ed. I've been with the district since 2000, so it's been 21 years. Before that, which is amazing to me. Every year I say that, it's amazing how much time flies, except for this year. Before that, I taught 7 years at Solanco High School and really enjoyed that. I also, a few years ago, working with Dr. Mann, helped run the CVVA program at the secondary level. And that was an amazing experience for me here within the district and something I really enjoyed. But after 5 years, it was kind of time to move on to do something a little different. And so last year, I was assigned to be the assistant to the principal at Fritz Elementary. And when I first found out about the assignment, I had always thought that my least desirable job working in a school district was probably a bus driver, because it's really hard to do every day. And I rode a lot of bus as assistant to the principal last year on bus 8. But anyways, the second job I was least interested was becoming an assistant principal at any level. And so I was a little apprehensive about the whole thing, but I always have an open mind and positive outlook. And I'm so glad I did, because it turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had in education after 28 years. I love that age level. I love working with the team there, the teachers, the kids. And I liked it so much that I decided to model our lifelong learning profile. And so I went back to school again, and to work on and complete my certificate for being a principal. And I was able to take a sabbatical last fall to finish up all the coursework. So now all I have to do is do a portfolio presentation and take another praxis. But anyways, it turned out to be a great experience. The sabbatical was awesome to get those courses done. And so I've actually only been back to school for 3 weeks. So this is not my August, but I'm pretty close to getting adjusted. But it's amazing what we've done, you guys have been able to do this year with the students, and very much appreciated. Just a little breakdown for my time. I actually work about 60% of my time at Fritz. I usually go there every morning until about noontime, and then I transition to the high school and work on secondary things a lot of times in the afternoons, and it switches depending on what's going on. So that was a little bit of a breakdown of my responsibilities and the percentages there, so I thought I'd include that. Our department goals, the theme has always been the learning profile, personalized learning. I'm a big fan of that. I went to visit Central York years ago and saw their Apollo program, so we really try to model some of the things they try to incorporate in that program, in our program. The 4 C's in education, and we really, and I talked a lot about this in my coursework, trying to find more voice and choice for students as part of their education, and that's a theme that we try to promote within our department here at CV. Couple of things going on in the business education program. We've really been striving to try to build our external internship program. Last year we had, and one of the things we did was to try to differentiate between the students that do a placement within the school district, a lot of teacher aides and things like that, versus outside working with businesses. So last year we had 37 within the school district and 21 outside of the school district. This year the numbers are skewed obviously because of COVID, so it's much harder to place students outside of the district. So we have 81 within the district and 6 outside. And Mr. Marinaro, he's the second year that he's helping. He has time in his schedule to help with the internship program. We also, I wanted to let you know, last year actually, we updated the accounting program, the 1, 2, and 3, and we make the 3rd level accounting an honors program, honors level course to help. One of the concerns was a lot of the higher achieving students wanted to take accounting, but they also wanted to take a lot of other honors types courses in their schedule, so this will help continue attracting students to that 3rd level. One of the things we've been doing in both departments, but especially in business ed, is moving away from using textbooks. We do use a lot of online simulations, and we had the board in previous years visit when Mr. Hillen was here to visit and see a couple of those simulations, the kids working on the simulations and how those go. And it's very effective and fun for the kids, and they really enjoy them. So we even added one for entrepreneurship this year as well. One thing we're going to do this summer, if approved with curricular hours, is rewrite the Introduction to Business course. We're moving away from the standard textbook that we've used, and what we'd like to do is create a course in Schoology that mimics more of the courses that we offer at upper levels here at CV, so the students get a real flavor of what's going on in those other courses as part of our introductory course, so they can have a good idea of what other things that we offer. And then one thing I think was presented maybe last month or so, we're going to update or replace the personal finance course with an introduction to investing course. And the reasoning behind that is when we went from 4 blocks a day at the high school to 5 blocks, we were able to make the senior course, which is consumer skills. It's a required course, half credit, 1/4 course. We increased that from 4.5 weeks to 9 weeks, and it really became a duplicate of what we taught in personal finance. And even though personal finance was an elective open to 9 to 12, we thought that we're either going to eliminate it completely, or we were going to try the Introduction to Investing course. And then that'll give it students grades 9 to 12 an opportunity to focus a little bit more on that area versus trying to duplicate what we do in consumer skills as a senior required course. So that was the reasoning behind that. It'll be interesting to see, we typically have about 60 plus kids take personal finance every year. And so I'm anxious to see how many students decide to try out the investing course when we do course selection. For social studies.
Can I ask a question before you move on so we don't
Oh,
have to
sure.
go back to this department? Do you have any interest in entrepreneurship courses?
Yeah, we have one course that we offer as a 9-week elective course at this time.
I'm thinking, you know, when you look out there, the number of people that get involved in their own businesses is much higher than the number of people that actually get active in the
Sure.
stock market.
Right.
To focus on what's going to be
Yeah, we
a
have.
skill most of them will use.
Yeah, we run about 2 sections every year for the entrepreneurship course. And one of the things to kind of get that a little bit more hands-on type experience was adding that simulation as part of that course as well.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So social studies, a couple of things going on. 2 years ago, we added the dual enrollment option for U.S. History 2 course through University of Pitt. We have a couple other courses we offer through Pitt as well. And so for the first time, we decided to try the U.S. History 2 course. 1 semester course, of course you get 3 credits if you pass the course, I think with a C or above, from Pitt. And when we decided to run that course, we knew that it probably would have an impact on the AP US History course that we've been running forever with Mr. Larkin, which is a year-long course. And at the end, the students, obviously take the AP test. And so what we found in doing that is kind of what we thought was going to happen. The numbers for the last 2 years for AP US History was 13 last year and 10 this year. So those numbers did go down. And we're going to take a look at, whether we can run that, continue to run that or not. So I'm thinking probably not at those low numbers. But anyways, it did have an impact. Before that, we would average low 20s every year for AP US History. So there was a significant drop. We've offered dual, so on the other side, you can see the numbers of requests for the Pitt option has been 65 last year for the first year and 47. So those numbers are more than double what we've ever had in AP US History. So very strong numbers there. For the first time for real, I guess, we gave the civics exam, which is required for a student anywhere between the grades of 7 to 12. We're going to give them in 8th grade for all our students at the end of the year, and we give it for seniors at the end of the course. And for the fall, 94% of the seniors passed the civics exam, so pretty pleased with that. We did have 20 students not take it, so one of the challenges that we have is trying to figure out a way to get 100%. Teachers reported it was either because they were absent or because of the real-time virtual students getting on and taking it and things like that. So that's something that we're gonna really try to work out for the spring and hopefully get 100%. It's not required, it's not a test that we count as part of the course. So we really have to try to, I think one of the things we're gonna do is try to plan a little early, give it a little earlier to have more time to catch up with students who don't take it. We also, as you know, approved, we're gonna pilot an African American Studies elective for this year coming up for the first time. And I'm anxious to see how many students request that course. And then Mr. Larkin, who teaches the AP US History course, he's retiring this year, and that will give us an opportunity. We talked about it a little bit last year, and that will give us an opportunity to really evaluate our program, see what we have for schedule requests from the students, and decide if we're going to continue and replace that position, or if we could eliminate that position and maybe save the district some money. So I know we'll be looking at that as an administrative team. And then at the elementary, middle school, one of the priorities obviously is to get ready for 6th, 7th, and 8th, moving the 6th grade to the middle school, and that gives us a chance to really dive into our curriculum at those 3 grade levels and try to do more of the profile and the personalized learning and maybe mix things up a little bit from what we've been doing for quite some time. This slide just shows you a little bit about some of what we use for materials at each grade level, and you can see that a lot of the textbooks that we use are pretty old, and that's one reason why we're trying to phase them out, and especially with Schoology and online and other resources that we can get either at no or little cost to the district. So that's what that's there for. And then future goals you can see on that slide. Any questions?
Can I ask if the civics test that you give, is that the test that's based on the citizenship test?
Yes, we have the option, the way it was written, is you can either choose to give the standard civics test, or you can create your own and send it for approval and go that route. And we chose to keep it somewhat simple and do the civics test.
That's a 100-question test, they take the full one?
Yep.
Okay. My other question is about the elementary. So does our elementary school have a consecutive curriculum for social studies?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I know I talked about teacher-generated materials, but I didn't get a sense of content, just what they cover in the elementary years, if they get a good, broad, non-repetitious curriculum.
Yeah, we did that a long time ago when the standards were first adopted, and we went K to 12. And we really did, one of the emphasis I remember even back then was to try to eliminate some of the duplications of what we do, so you don't get the same thing 3 times, especially in the primary grades. So yes, we do have a K to 6 curriculum. It is in on-hand schools, and it is available for the teachers to follow. It's always a challenge finding the time, because it is in a PSSA or tested area at the elementary level. So when you do a lot of special schedules or change or things like that, one of the first things to go is social studies time. So we are aware of that, but we try to do what we can in the time that we have, but we do have an approved, adopted K-6 curriculum.
And can I assume that some of the review you're doing includes incorporating diversity and the history courses?
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, very much so. Not only, it's been nice to have that experience, exposure, participating at a school level. You know, I know Fritz, with Black History Month, we're doing all kinds of different things every day, just in support of that, but also within our curriculum.
Any other questions? Thanks, Dwight.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments from CVEA tonight?
Nice, thanks.
All right. Comments from other employee groups? Comments from the public tonight? All right,
See Mrs. Slumper, if she has anything.
anything you want to say? All right, board, you have in front of you the consent agenda. These are things that we have talked about or are routine in nature. If there's no questions, I will take a motion to approve our consent agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, starting with Dana.
Aye.
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 And aye. All right. That one kind of goofy there, so. With the transition from Mr. Smoker, this is just, board, we're just gonna have a little, I'll just mention it here tonight. John is on through the end of February, so as of March 8th, we will be accepting his resignation at that board meeting. And at that point in time, the seat will become open. So we are anticipating an opening. I bet you would know best. Can we advertise?
We've done this before, we've said we anticipate a vacancy, and as long as we call it anticipating, we're not making a promise, you know. John decides not to hand in his resignation or something. But I think that gives a reasonably honest expansion of the time people have to get an application in.
So yeah, so we're anticipating an opening as of the first meeting in March. And at that point in time, board that meeting, assuming we do that, we will discuss how we're going to go about filling that vacancy and all
Did
the.
you take applications? Is it possible to make the applications available sooner?
It is. We can do that online.
Okay.
We can do that through the website.
But we'll further discuss
Yeah.
how we're gonna handle that
All I'm
next
concerned about
meeting.
is the application part of it gets taken care
Yeah,
of.
and we'll make sure it is anticipated.
All right, so that's that. Phyllis?
I think it's on. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do two things in one presentation here. Back in the fall, we had talked about, when we talked about the community and economic numbers, I had mentioned that the Independent Fiscal Office, which is sort of the comparable of the Congressional Budget Office here in Pennsylvania, usually does a 5-year outlook, and they had not released it at their normal timeframe in November, so we skipped that part. And it actually just got released in January, so I have a couple of slides. They did a nice PowerPoint this year, so I just grabbed some of their slides to show you some of that. And then about halfway through, maybe 6 slides, we're gonna flip and then talk about the governor's budget that he just released 10 days ago, I guess now. So to get started, the way the Independent Fiscal Office does this is they sort of break it into 2 components. They talk about the demographic picture, and then they sort of go into the economic numbers. So I'm gonna follow that same trend. A number of things, if you think maybe I just repeated the slide from last year, in a couple of these instances I did, because the numbers really haven't changed. So we're continuing to see trends where the school age population and then the working age populations are contracting in Pennsylvania. And then you see those older populations are continuing to increase. And so we're concerned about that for 2 reasons. One is I look at these numbers to try to gauge not only what is happening here at CV enrollment wise and kind of here in Lancaster County, but how does that extrapolate to the rest of the state and kind of gives you a picture of what it looks like for education. It'll tell us, are we an anomaly or sort of are we in the average? And then when you look at the state education budget, you can kind of see the fluctuations because education is such a big component of the state budget. You can kind of get a flavor for whether those funding dollars are gonna go up or gonna go down. Obviously, the other piece that's important to that is trying to look at what it means economically for us, and really that's kind of coming out of a labor participation or a workforce standpoint. And so those will give us some ideas of, what our economy is gonna look like. Are we gonna have enough workers in the workforce to be able to push economic growth, job growth forward? And so what obviously we're seeing right now is that, we've got people who are not in the workforce. Some who have lost jobs, some who have chosen to stay out maybe because they have children at home. Others who maybe for health reasons, just with the pandemic, do not want to be in the labor market. And so that contraction, what has helped it has been those older cohorts, the 55 to 64 and 65 plus, have actually filled some of that gap. And so that's been a little bit helpful to us. But one of the reasons that we don't see sort of the same effect on unemployment kind of here locally that you may see in other areas of the state or statewide is because we tend to kind of fill those gaps. So we want to go to the next slide and hopefully, we get vaccine rolling and things that will help us kind of get some more of those traditional workers back into the workforce. But this slide then just really gives you the numbers so you can kind of see what's happening to each of those age cohorts, and then seeing that, Pennsylvania has really essentially been flat since 2015. So it definitely tells a story. And then as I mentioned, when you go to the next part of the report, then it starts to focus on the economic numbers. And so obviously Pennsylvania has a little bit of a problem in that what tends to happen for us as a Commonwealth is that our rate of growth of our expenses tends to be higher and heavier than our rate of growth of revenues. And so obviously that creates a deficit, creates a problem for us, and you're gonna see the effect of that when I get to it in a couple of slides, where the state was projecting to run about $1 billion deficit, and now they've essentially, through the pandemic, doubled that number. One of the things, obviously, any report that you do has to have assumptions, you're doing it off of some basis. And so one of the things I think it's important for you to recognize is that all of the numbers going forward are gonna depend on obviously what happens. The assumption that the IFO has used is it's gonna kind of take us 2 years to go through some sort of climb out of this economic crisis. And then in 2023 and going forward, maybe we'll kind of get back to quote unquote sort of more normal levels. So we'll see kind of how that plays through as well. One of the things that they did talk about is that there has obviously been job loss as we've gone through the pandemic. It's been pretty significant, but trying to make a guess and where John was talking about, how long he's been here, I was thinking about Daryl Stoltz, who's always used to say, well, but you don't really know when you look at the unemployment rate, how many folks are not ever coming back into the labor force, and that's right. And one of the challenges that we have right now is trying to figure out of the people that are out, which population and what percentage of those people are coming back and what percent are just gonna be jobs that are gonna be lost. So on this slide, you can see that assumption that I talked about, where you're kind of see real GDP growth being fairly significant for 2 years after the downturn of 2020, and then everything sort of starts to normalize. So they're calling that kind of the recovery period before we go into the typical growth. You will see that wages aren't affected as much, and really the reason behind that is very similar to what I've been telling you about our earned income tax revenues. When the job losses tend to be at those lower wage jobs, you're not gonna see the decline in the wages and salaries that you would if there were at a higher level job loss, or wage loss, excuse me. And then a couple of slides that were in the presentation, all credit to the IFO for these, I thought were interesting. This one just shows you some of the past recessions. So you can see the 2008 one there and the dip that occurred there and took us 2 to 3 years. So your years is across the bottom of the chart to kind of climb out of that, and kind of a much longer time to kind of get back to where they were kind of pre-crisis. And you can see the very significant drop, obviously, with the pandemic, have made strides to kind of get back to some more normal levels. But obviously, if you look at the numbers on the left side of the chart, we have a long way to go. People are talking anywhere from 2 to 6 years it's gonna kind of take us to get back to where we were pre-pandemic. The next one, we talked about this before a little bit as well. I think on the first slide, I had a bullet item that, healthcare is one of the jobs. So certainly with that older population, you're seeing health and long-term care job growth in our economy. But if you think about this particular slide from a Conestoga Valley lens, you're gonna pretty quickly realize that some of the industries that have had the largest number of job losses are those that are in our community. So certainly restaurants, we have retail and clothing with the outlets and some of the other stores, and then the accommodations with the hoteliers and some of those other facilities. So we are definitely gonna see the effects of this more than maybe some of the other districts across the state. And then the last one really gives you kind of the picture of the Commonwealth budget and what their budget revenues versus expenses looks like. And this is where I had mentioned you're seeing that preliminary projected ending balance being about double. So we're looking at 1.1 a billion to 1.2 in the past, and now at 2.5, 2.6. So much bigger numbers as a result of those revenues not being able to keep pace with the expenses. And then this is sort of where I'm going to switch. So that's all of the IFO stuff that I'm going to talk about. Certainly if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them or provide you with some more detail. But then moving on to the state budget, which is sort of the normal thing that I talk about at this meeting. And I saw this picture of House Speaker Cutler on the right-hand side, and I thought, that looks almost like the same suit of the picture I used last year. And then I saw he had his mask off, and I thought, that's just kind of a perfect two sides of what last year looked like versus this year, and then the caption certainly of having a lot to agree on and then respectfully disagreeing. So gives you a flavor for what's happening in Harrisburg these days. But if you haven't dove into some of the fine points of the governor's budget, I'm just going to go through sort of at a high level, kind of give you the Cliff Notes version, and then there are just a couple of pieces that I think are pretty important to us here at CV that I do want to talk about in a little bit of detail. So all told, when you look at the budget, and yes, this is not a typo, a $1.3 billion increase. So what was $100 million last year, $100 million proposed increase becomes $1.3 billion. And we'll sort of talk about how the governor projects that we're going to kind of get there. And the 9,000,007 number to the 11,000,002 is the K-12 portion of the state budget. So you can kind of see the significance of the increase there. Some of these are flat or not really any changes from prior years, so I'm not going to talk about those, but there are a couple that do have some significance for us. So special education funding is also projected, or at least in the governor's proposed budget, to have an increase. There again, going from 25 million projected last year to 200 million would be the proposal for this year. PlanCon, which is the one at the bottom of the chart, is significant for us. If you remember, planning and construction dollars has been retooled at the state, so they came up with a whole new cycle of how we actually apply for that money. The problem was for a number of years after the commission report was laid forth, that there was no money, funding in the budget for it. So we've actually put funding in this year for the first time. That's important to us because we will ultimately be applying for those funds as we continue through our projects. On the next slide, then you get a little bit, some funding, but more policy initiatives. And again, some of these look very familiar. The governor's talked about these before. $45,000 teacher salary, base salary for teachers, which I think the school code still has at 18,000 or something like that, so it would be changing that number. Minimum wage increase, that's been talked about before. The $1 billion in lead and asbestos abatement has been in the governor's budget before. And the governor has certainly talked about charter school reform before, but not quite in the way that he talked about it in this budget address. And this one is significant for us. I have a chart and a couple of slides that I'll get to that show you not only what it looks like for us, but also across the districts in Lancaster County, so you can kind of see how it's affecting all of us, frankly. But the governor's idea here would be the way to get to that $230 million of savings would be really through two steps. What happens right now is when we pay for cyber charter kids who go to an outside cyber charter school, if it's a regular education kid, there's a flat rate, and if it's a special education kid, there's a different flat rate. And so it's counterintuitive in that the way the state funds us for our special education students is on a 3-tiered program through what we refer to as Act 16. So you basically look at the cost tiers and you put the students in the buckets depending on the cost that you incur to educate those students, and then the state reimbursement comes back to you based upon how many kids fall into each bucket. So the theory would be to take that same model and apply it to the cyber charters. So that would mean that if you have more weighted towards students who maybe have some itinerant services or not as many needs, is that you're not gonna pay nearly as much for those kids. And when I get to the tuition chart, you'll see those tuition costs per kid are fairly significant on the special education side. And then on the flat rate, or on the other side, is having for the regular ed kids a straight flat tuition rate. So the weird part about cyber charters now, just as a reminder, is if I send a student or we send a student to a cyber charter and Elanco sends a student to that same cyber charter school, we're paying 2 different rates for that student. So this would equalize it, make everybody just flat at the 9,500. And again, you'll see the effects of that when I get to the chart and show it to you. So the next thing I do is I always try to wrap it up and kind of show you what the Commonwealth budget had in it last year versus our budget, or for the current year, I guess I should say. And then looking forward to the upcoming year, the governor's proposal versus what we have in our budget. So obviously a huge difference there, because I would have never expected that the governor was going to put the 1.1 billion in, and that we would be potentially, although I think virtually unlikely, recipients of $10 million of that. That $10.5 million is the combination of the $1.1 billion in the funding that he wants to rework the formula, and then the other piece being the 200,000 that's going to get layered on top, and I'll talk about how he's going to do that. That's the other piece that I wanted to just share with you, so you understand the two components to it. But certainly you can see that we have not put any of this funding in our budget at this point. I think that number is so different than where obviously you realize the legislature is, that we're just gonna have to wait and see. It's certainly gonna come down. What it comes down to is yet to be seen. So then, as I mentioned, how are we going to pay for this? And again, not that this is gonna happen, but the governor's idea was that we would do a PIT rate increase from about 3% to 4.5%. And if you dive into the numbers there, the theory is that because it'd be on a tiered system where higher wage earners would pay more, that there would be about 2/3 of Pennsylvanians who would either not pay any more in PIT or would actually pay less. So I was trying to make it work that way. But the biggest shift would be that, and we've interestingly enough been asking for this, just not asking for all of it in 1 year. You've heard Dr. Z say in the past, although I think his number was 9 million, so we've grown 1 million over the years he's been talking about it, is that if we could take all of the funding that the state technically would owe to CV, if we could reset ourselves, take that $10 million and flow it all through the funding formula, what would it look like? Obviously the challenge to that, so this proposal would do that. The challenge to that is that what happens is you're taking that $1 billion and you're moving it from 336 districts to 164, and so you're creating losers of folks who are, if I'm getting 10 million more, somebody else is getting 10 million less, and then what do you sort of do? That's where the PIT rate increase comes in, is you take those dollars and then use that to make the district that lost the 10 million whole. And so you've gotten me to where I needed to be, but you haven't disenfranchised that other district who had the 10 million over the past couple of years through the old formula. So that's step one. Step two, then after you kind of do, make the money go through the formula, is making those districts whole. And then step three is the very last bullet item on this slide, taking that $200 million, which is what they're calling truly the increase, because it's the increase on the new base, and applying that across all the 500 districts. So that district that lost the 10 million gets made whole, and then gets some nominal increase on top of that, out of that $200 million. So for us, it's gonna be about 10 million of it is that switch of all of the money going through the formula, and the 200 million would best guess, based on old numbers, so they haven't updated all the components of the formula, would be about 500,000, so add the two together, and that's how you get to the 10.5 million. And then I had promised I would show you the charter school costs, so I highlighted our row there so you can see where we are. If you look at the tuition rates on the right, you can see that every single one of those regular tuition rates is over the 9,500 that the governor proposed, so there would be savings for the districts in the difference between your number and the 9,500 multiplied by however many kids, regular ed kids you have. And then you can see some of the special ed costs, as I mentioned before, are fairly significant. And it does not cost us that amount to educate some of those kids, but that's what we've got to pay when we send a kid to cyber charter, because that's what the formula produces. And then we had talked to you before, at least back at the community forum, about the difference between what's happening in this year's budget. We have had not significant in numbers of kids going to the outside cyber charters, but our numbers they were pretty low because obviously Dr. Mann's worked very hard at that. And you as a board had a goal for us to do that. So we brought that number down, and we're kind of back up to where we were several years ago. And that would mean about $500,000 to us in additional expense that we have in this year's budget that we haven't historically had the last couple of years. But at the bottom of that column, you can see that what's happening to all the districts across, this is just Lancaster County, seeing that $12 million number. If our projected actually comes in where we think it's gonna come in, it's gonna be a pretty significant outflow from local school districts to cyber charters for this year. And then the last piece, so what does it all mean? Obviously, if you see Speaker Cutler's comments, you can gather this thing was dead on arrival. And it brings to point, then why do it? Why did the governor say it if we knew it was not going to fly with the legislature? And I guess on one hand, you run the risk of it being so wow that people won't listen to you. But on the other hand, I guess you run the risk of it being so wow that people start thinking outside the box. Let's not do the incremental change. What would really happen if we stripped everything away and did something completely different? And that, I think, is a good conversation starter. I don't think even those of us, and maybe Dr. Z would disagree, but those of us who've been saying that money needs to start going through the formula, the problem is the base is not going through the formula. So it's going to take just years and years and years for us to sort of get to our equitable share if you never start looking at the base, if you just always do what the state's been doing, which is take that additional increment and move it forward. Certainly recognizing that there's really only two ways to do this, right? You gotta increase funding, get new sources of revenue at the state level, or somehow figure out a way to decrease expense. And that's an option. The state can certainly start to peel back some of the mandates they have on us. That would help as well. We're all taxpayers. We're taxpayers of our local district, and then we're also state taxpayers. We pay that PIT. So it's sort of coming out of one pocket or the other, depending on which way you look at it. But I think we would agree that it doesn't make sense to kind of do it all at once and just retool the whole formula. That disenfranchises the districts who are losing that $10 million, because even though they're getting made whole in this initial run at it, it's still going to be very difficult for them to kind of plan on a dime to start pulling back some programs and services and kind of rethinking and consolidating the things that they're doing just like it's gonna take us more than the next 5 or 6 months, if we were to get that $10 million to build up the capacity and everything that we need in place to use it efficiently and effectively. So it just takes more time than I think what's on the table. And then lastly, we are always struggling with, and certainly we have an equity group that is meeting here at the district, struggling with the student equity piece versus the taxpayer equity piece. And I think, we all agree that we ourselves as taxpayers, and then we want our taxpayers to feel like, things are equitable and fair. But what tends to make it difficult is when you're in a district where you've got a higher percent of free and reduced population kids, when you've got kids that are gonna need remediation, when you've got kids that are English language learners, when you get kids that have emotional stress, all of those things cost more. And so those types of scenarios tend to happen in districts that are less wealthy and need to be able to have the funding to be able to put in place to deal with those situations. So trying to balance those two plays is certainly worth the conversation at the state level as well. So we'll see if any of that comes to fruition as the next couple of months go by. Next step for the legislature is to start with their appropriations hearings and start to hear department by department of all the budgets, and then to start to make some decisions about where they think the funding is going to be based upon, as I showed you in the front part of the slide presentation, what the state budget looks like. Any questions on either one of those?
I appreciate you trying to give us the upside of something that is labeled dead on arrival, but I think one of the other upsides is that what the governor put out there, if it does nothing else, it emphasizes just how far off we are from where we need to be. Not that we're going to do all that at once, but we've been saying for years, we're not, schools aren't being supported at the state level the way they should. And that huge difference there, I think, sort of maybe emphasizes that. I don't think, I understand the idea of not wanting to do it all at once. However, when we do it slowly, after a couple of years, it disappears. I remember when the basic education funding fund was passed, it was wonderful the way it was laid out. It was an excellent program, but it's going nowhere. So maybe sometimes you just take the pain at one time. I understand the idea of winners and losers, because the whole harmless has been what has held up almost all of this. And the one thing I would give the governor, and that he at least addressed that. Before it was just either getting paid too much. Many of them, but not all, aren't really losers, because they've been getting a windfall for all of these years. So, bringing them even halfway back does not make them a loser just because they get a little less money, because some are getting so much more. And that's not all of them. For some of them, I understand it's a problem. The charter schools, I think, is the most important one, and the one maybe least likely to go anywhere, because last year, the legislature agreed to talk about charter reform as long as we didn't talk about money. They're willing to talk about accountability, they're willing to talk about achievement, but they still want them paid the same amount. And until we get them off that spot, that doesn't move. I mean, that's unfortunate, because even with this special ed cost, nobody's really checking if they're even giving those students their special ed services. They're just taking an extra $20,000 a year for them.
Yeah,
We get a lot of students back that we find out we're getting service. I don't just mean CV, I mean in general, that weren't getting services and we're being paid that inflated rate. I mean, there's where I think last year our Auditor General tried to really hammer them and say, this is the worst, labeled the worst charter school law in the country. That's not where we want to be number one.
That's the challenge of us not being in charge of those charter schools, so that's
We use the word choice to mean better, and sometimes it is, but it's not always better.
If there aren't any other questions about that, the next item on your agenda is the preliminary budget approval. So we went through all that last week, tried to split this up so you didn't have to listen to me longer than you just did. So we're just looking for, I believe you normally do this in two motions. You're gonna do the preliminary budget first and then pass all of the appropriate resolutions and notices for us to proceed.
I move we accept preliminary budget.
Second. Roll call starting with Keisha.
Aye.
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 And aye.
I move we accept the resolutions.
Second. Roll call starting with Mike. Aye.
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 And aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, board, you have in front of you the finance and operation report and the curriculum instruction reports. Any questions on them? Dr.
No,
Caesar?
sir. No.
All right. Idette, anything that you'd like to highlight other than what you gave us already?
Yeah, it's getting long, I'm gonna have to pare some of that down. I sort of this time double starred a few things, specifically might apply to us. You may wanna check those in particular out, but other than that, it is what it says.
John, any comments from the CTC?
So just two things. We are working hard to increase the post-secondary enrollment. And so they've been doing a lot of work around that. So you should see things come out about that in the near future. We're also working on a 5-year plan for building improvement and maintenance, which is something they've never had. So that's something that'll be happening over the next few months as well.
All right, then we're gonna turn to Fred. Fred, you got any comments for us, or you wanna give us some highlights and updates?
Yep, give me a couple. We'll be bringing it up. So overall, the middle school project is 20% complete. I don't make, oh, there it is, okay. If we could just go right to the, that's actually an aerial shot of the, looking towards the B section, the 3-story structural steel. And then if we can move to, I think it's page 3, which or 4, which is the other photographs. Starting with the site, the work that's going on there is the extension of the north parking lot, which is what's shown in these pictures. That's the existing parking lot that's adding an extension to it. The next page is the walking path that basically circumnavigates the campus. Page after that, on site, that's actually the top of the tank, but the 40,000 gallon fire tank has been buried in the ground and installed. So there'll be some grading going on around that and some other paving areas. Below that is just stormwater work, which continues on various areas of the site. That's probably, I think we're probably about 65% complete with that. Moving to the building, again, that's area B, pad, that is the structural steel. That's being erected at this point. Following that is some masonry bearing. It's another picture of the structural steel, but there'll be masonry bearing walls. And I'm gonna guess probably in about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks max, the precast concrete plank will start arriving on the site, and that'll be the elevated floors or pads for the 3-story. These pictures are the area A and C footings being installed. That work's just got started. We're probably gonna start some masonry walls in area or masonry foundations in area A. So that's the middle school. That's the status. Questions?
Has the weather been much of an issue?
Well, it is, some of the steel work, masonry and concrete are the two big issues that's up for obviously the water that's involved in that, but the steel work can continue. It's just a matter of moving snow out of the way to get them to be able to work. So really the push is for the three-story area and get that on the roof. We're a little bit behind there, the weather has affected us there, but again, right now, we're at the point where we can set the plank, we can set the structural steel. There is some small masonry bearing that can be protected from the temperatures. Rain probably would be the biggest problem. Snow can be removed.
Any questions for Fred?
Where do we stand on the final punch list for Brownstown?
We are hopefully squeezing out the last week of it. We've had a lot of activity actually there today, yesterday, because the day that the school was out. Closeout documents, I think on two of the prime contractors have already been issued, and their punch list has been complete. It's primarily the general contractor right now who is cooperating, and it's just tedious to get all the small little items dealt with. But they've made huge progress in the past week, and especially yesterday, because the building was wide open. Another snow day would help.
See what we can do for Thursday.
But I suspect, we have a deadline of the 19th for them that I suspect it's just gonna be crossing some Ts and dotting Is on that.
Thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
All right, second time in the meeting for public comments. Any board comments or announcements tonight? All right, board, you see the upcoming dates, March 8th and March 15th. Second meeting there is our community forum, will be held at the middle school. With that, board, I will take a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed?